I was still on the call when they boarded the plane. "Okay, well, safe travels to work this week," I said, trying to wrap up the conversation with my mom and sister. It had been short, barely 10 minutes. They were distracted, kind of rushed. My sister kept glancing away, and my mom kept saying, "I'll call you back, honey. We're just about to—" "About to what?" I asked. But before she could finish, the line dropped. No goodbye. No love you. Just silence. I sat there staring at the home screen of my phone, blinking. Then the familiar itch of something not quite right made me open Instagram. And that's when I saw it. A group photo, my entire family, standing at the gate at LAX. Matching luggage, matching t-shirts, even the cousins, even Uncle Glenn, who never flies anywhere, all beaming, arms around each other, boarding passes in hand. The caption read, "Family trip, just us, Rome, here we come." I read it twice, then a third time. "Just us," I whispered. They say if you've ever been betrayed by family, hitting like brings peace, subscribing brings clarity, and commenting brings karma to those who wronged you. Try it, and tell me where you're watching from. Anyways, there were 16 people in that photo. Every relative I grew up around. Every voice from every Sunday dinner. Every one of them had packed, planned, coordinated, and flown to another continent together. Without me. Not a text, not a heads up, not even a sorry you can't come, just nothing. I stared at the photo until the screen dimmed. My hands felt cold, my face felt warm. I clicked on my sister's story. It was already live. Videos of them at the airport lounge, laughing over mimosas. My dad making a joke about bringing too many power adapters. My niece tugging her carry-on behind her like a little globetrotter. And in the background, my mom, waving to someone behind the camera. That same mom who had been on the phone with me not even 5 minutes ago, pretending she wasn't in an airport. My heart dropped into my stomach. Not just because I wasn't there, but because they all knew I wasn't. And none of them thought it was worth mentioning. It wasn't just exclusion, it was erasure. And it wasn't new. But this time, it cut different. Because this time, I had talked to them that same morning. I had heard the noise in the background and assumed it was a cafe. I had brushed off the quick, clipped answers because I thought they were running errands. I thought I was being considerate. They were being evasive. And for what? To spare me the guilt? To avoid the awkwardness of telling me I wasn't invited? Or because I was simply never part of the plan? I zoomed in on the photo. There was my sister in her designer wrap. My brother in his casual luxury travel gear. My parents leaning into each other like some stock photo of a happy couple exploring Europe in retirement. I noticed the first-class boarding passes in their hands. Even that was curated. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a family statement. And the loudest part of that statement? I wasn't in it. My phone buzzed with a notification. Mom just posted a reel. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat very still at my kitchen counter, blinking through the sudden haze of something far too familiar. It was the feeling of being the footnote, the afterthought, the "we figured you were busy" family member, the one they assumed didn't want to come because she wasn't flashy enough, fun enough, important enough. But they called this morning, they heard my voice, they knew, and they went anyway, without a word. I walked over to the coffee machine, forgetting I'd already brewed a cup. The now cold mug sat untouched on the counter. I picked it up and poured it out, hands trembling only slightly. I wasn't crying, not yet. It wasn't sadness, not exactly. It was shock. I checked the time. They'd be in the air soon, probably laughing over in-flight menus and debating Roman itineraries. I imagined my name might come up. She probably wouldn't have wanted to come, She's always working. She doesn't like to travel. All easy lies, all comfortable fictions they'd used before. The truth? I would have gone. I always would have gone. Not for the photos, not for the food, for the belonging, for the moments between events, the shared glances, the clinking of glasses, the sibling sarcasm, the jet-lag naps in hotels that smelled like lemon cleaner and promise. I would have gone for them. But they never even asked. They didn't give me the option. They made the decision for me, and then posted about it, publicly, with a caption that felt like a slap. Just us. I sat back down at the kitchen counter, hands resting palm up on the cold marble. My phone buzzed again. A friend replying to my story from last night. A quiet photo of my desk lamp, some books, and a steaming cup of tea. So cozy. Are you okay? I didn't reply. I opened notes and typed one sentence. They all went to Rome without me. Then another. I was on the phone with them when they posted the photo. Then I deleted both. Because I wasn't ready to explain it. Not yet. Not to friends, not to anyone. But inside? Something was shifting. Something tight, something silent. It wasn't rage, and it wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. The kind that only comes when someone erases you so confidently, so collectively, you suddenly see how many pens they've used over the years to write you out. I stared at the words, "just us," again, and this time, I whispered to myself not with pain but with decision. So, I'm not part of that anymore. It wasn't the first time. That's the part that stung most. This wasn't some shocking out-of-character betrayal. This was just another notch. Another quiet confirmation of something I'd always known but never wanted to believe. I was optional. When I was 10, I remember waking up to balloons and cake in the living room. I thought, finally. They remembered. But it wasn't for me. It was a surprise brunch for my cousin Trina, who had just gotten into college. My birthday was the next day. No one mentioned it. When I turned 16, I waited at the door in my new blue dress. I had baked cupcakes, set the table, even put out the good plastic plates. Only 2 friends showed up. No one from my family did. My mom had double-booked herself with a bridal shower. My sister was at a concert. My dad forgot. When I turned 25, my birthday fell on the same week as my sister's engagement party. She posted a group photo captioned, "All the people I love most." I wasn't in it. It's not personal, my dad once told me, when I finally worked up the courage to say I felt left out. We just assumed you were busy. You're the independent one, my sister said another time. You don't really like this stuff, right? My mother just looked up from her glass of wine and shrugged. Sweetheart, not everyone needs a big deal made about them. But I did. Not a spectacle, not a spotlight, just to be included, to be thought of, to be remembered. I was always the one who texted first. Always the one who sent gifts, made playlists, baked cakes, remembered anniversaries. I still have the card I made for my brother when he got into med school. Handwritten, hand-painted, sealed with a wax stamp like something out of a Jane Austen novel. He never said thank you. I remember one 4th of July, I found out they'd all rented a beach house for the weekend. I saw it on my sister's story. Fireworks over the ocean. Everyone smiling. Matching pajamas. When I asked her about it later, she said, "Oh, it was last minute." There were matching shirts. Nothing about it was last minute. But I laughed, said it was fine, that I had work anyway. That's the script I always played. Work, too far, busy, not my thing. It was easier than admitting the truth. I hadn't been invited. There's a particular loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from watching everyone you love gather without you and realizing they don't even think it's wrong. That was the kind of loneliness I carried. It lived in the pauses of our group chats. The way no one ever asked, "What about Delilah?" The way I could go 3 weeks without hearing from anyone unless someone needed help with a resume or wanted feedback on a photo caption. I was useful, but not essential. Reliable, but not wanted. I used to think maybe I imagined it, that maybe I was being dramatic, that maybe I had internalized some kind of shame about being quieter, more private, more bookish. Maybe I gave off the impression that I didn't want to be included. But that morning, the photo, the caption, "Just us," was like a lightning strike that lit up every past shadow. It made everything clear. I hadn't imagined it. They had just decided a long time ago that I didn't matter as much. The worst part wasn't the photo. It wasn't the matching outfits or the curated hashtags or the smiling faces that didn't even miss me. It was the fact that my sister had called me 10 minutes before they posted it and said nothing. She looked me in the face over video chat, saw me sitting there in my living room, hair up in my old hoodie. She saw the quiet smile I gave her, the little wave, the way I asked how everyone was doing. And she said nothing. Not even a "wish you were here." Not even a lie. She just hung up. And then posted the photo. I keep trying to remember what I did wrong. Was it because I didn't fly home for Christmas last year? Because I didn't laugh at the group chat meme? Because I missed one baby shower when I had a client deadline? I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's everything. Maybe the truth is just this. They got used to not including me, and I got used to not being included. I scrolled through more photos that morning, the group boarding shot, the meal on the plane, the Rome airport arrival, my cousin hugging her boyfriend outside a rental car. I kept looking for a clue, something that said they felt bad, something that suggested they noticed my absence. There was nothing. Not a single post said, "Wish Delilah were here." Not a single comment replied, "Where's Delilah?" Not a single text arrived. They had gone, they had smiled, they had posted, and they had moved on. Without me. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay there in bed, the blue glow of my phone painting my ceiling in shadows. My finger hovered over the family group chat. I could type something. I could say something. I could call it out. But I didn't. Because I knew exactly what would happen. They'd say it was a misunderstanding. They'd say I was too sensitive. They'd say, "We didn't think you'd want to come." And worst of all, I'd probably say, "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. Not this time. It wasn't about Rome. It wasn't about pasta or flights or photo ops. It was about the growing file of memories where I was missing, where no one noticed, where no one cared, where they all went on living like I wasn't part of the story at all. And now, this international trip, something that had clearly taken months to plan, was just the most recent page in that file. A bold, full-colored, geotagged reminder that I wasn't worth the invitation. I whispered to myself that night, just before finally drifting off, exhausted. It wasn't the trip that hurt. I felt the words rest on my tongue like ash. It was how easy it was to erase me. I used to dream about proving them wrong. There was a time when I imagined walking into a family gathering, dressed in something sleek and expensive, casually dropping the name of a celebrity client I was consulting for, and watching their faces go slack with disbelief. But eventually, the fantasy got old. Not because I didn't want the validation, but because I didn't need it anymore. I had already built the life they thought I was incapable of. They just didn't know. And that was the sweetest part of all. They still saw me as that broke freelancer with a laptop that was always on 2% battery and a mismatched pair of socks. The one who used to do logo redesigns for $50 and thought getting paid in exposure was a real opportunity. I don't blame them, honestly. That's the version of me they left behind. And it was easier for them to keep her there. It meant they didn't have to take me seriously. It meant they didn't have to feel guilty about forgetting me. It meant I was harmless. They never saw the real shift. The all-nighters I pulled, learning SEO strategy and user funnel optimization. The networking calls I scheduled at 4 a.m. because the client was in Singapore. The way I turned down dinners and weekends away because I was on deadline, not for survival, but for scaling. They weren't there when I launched my first digital product and made more in 2 days than I used to in a month. They didn't know I now had clients in 5 time zones, 2 virtual assistants, and a calendar booked 6 weeks out. To them, I was still that girl. Delilah's doing her thing, they'd say, with a smile that said, "We don't really know what that thing is, but it probably doesn't pay much." I remember once, at a family dinner, my uncle asked, "Still doing the computer stuff?" I replied, "Yeah, still running my agency." He nodded like I'd said I was still babysitting on weekends, then turned to my cousin Josh and asked him how med school was going. I sat there, sipping from my glass of water, thinking about how I'd just closed a $35,000 contract that morning. But I didn't say it, because I never needed to. There's a strange power in being underestimated. It frees you from their expectations. It gives you space to grow in peace, to evolve without commentary, to build your empire quietly, brick by unacknowledged brick. And then, one day, they look up and realize the girl they ignored is sitting in a penthouse suite. And they never even saw her climb. I remember the turning point so clearly. I had just wrapped a major rebranding campaign for a global fitness platform. The CEO had cried, actually cried, on the final review call saying, "You didn't just get the brand, you got me." They wired me the bonus before the invoice was even signed. I walked out of my apartment, took the elevator down to the street, and just stood there in the sun. No one was clapping. There was no parade. But I felt taller. Like I'd finally stepped into the version of myself I always knew was possible. And yet, my family still thought I was struggling to cover rent. Still thought I was living off instant noodles and Canva-free accounts. Still thought I was waiting for my big break, not realizing I'd already had 10. That's why they didn't invite me to Rome. They didn't think I could afford it. They didn't think I'd vibe with the kind of hotel they were staying in. They didn't think I'd want to be there. And worse, they didn't care if I did. In their minds, I was still on the outside, because they had frozen me in time. My sister once said, "You're so good at the laptop thing. You should make a course or something." I laughed. I already had 3. One of them had grossed over $80,000 last quarter. I almost told her. Almost. But instead, I smiled and said, "Yeah, maybe someday." Because the truth is, I wasn't building any of this to impress them. I was building it for the girl who used to cry after family dinners. The one who felt invisible every time someone asked what she did and immediately changed the subject. The one who kept showing up, hoping to be seen. I don't need revenge. I don't need to make them feel small. That's not the story I want to write. But I do need to honor how far I've come. Because when no one clapped for me, I kept building. When no one asked, I kept learning. When no one believed in me, I dared to believe anyway. There's something deeply satisfying about logging into your Stripe dashboard and seeing 5 figures land overnight. Not because money is the goal, but because it represents value, impact, mastery. There's something delicious about getting invited to speak at a conference where your past client is now in the audience, nodding along. There's something powerful about paying your quarterly taxes and realizing, I did this. No safety net, no handouts, No applause, just me, my ideas, my work. I used to think success would make me feel bigger than them. But now, it just makes me feel more me, more grounded, more seen. By myself, if no one else. I don't need their praise. But I also won't let their version of me dictate my place in the world. They thought I was still that broke freelancer. They thought I didn't fit the aesthetic. They thought I was too fragile, too artsy, too out of sync with their curated itinerary. So they excluded me. Silently, seamlessly, without guilt. But here's what they didn't know. I could have bought their flight and upgraded it. I could have paid for that villa. Twice. I could have hired the photographer who took their group picture. And that knowledge, it's mine to savor. I don't want to make them feel bad. I just want to make sure I never feel that small again. So no, I won't confront them. I won't beg for an explanation. But I will do one thing. Something quiet, something elegant, something unforgettable. Because I may not have been invited on that plane. But I'm still going to make sure they feel me at 30,000 feet. I don't know what hit me first, the sting or the silence. It was past midnight. The apartment was quiet, save for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak from the pipes. I'd stopped doom scrolling through the trip photos hours ago, but the image still burned behind my eyes. My entire family smiling at the terminal, all wearing matching shirts that said, "Tran family takes Rome." I couldn't sleep, couldn't cry anymore either. I just lay there in the dark, eyes wide, fingers twitching. I'd written and deleted a dozen different messages. None of them would have made a difference. Then something shifted. I sat up in bed, pulled my laptop onto my knees, and typed the name of the airline into my browser. If they were going to Rome, they had to be on one of two airlines. My guess was right. They'd tagged the carrier in a photo caption. It didn't take long to find the exact flight, direct to Fiumicino. First class, based on the check-in photo I'd dissected far too closely. There were 6 of them in the shot. My parents, my sister Lily, her husband, my brother Noah, and my cousin Trina. Not me. The website said the flight would depart in 3 days. That meant there was time. I stared at the screen for a while before opening a new tab. Vintage champagne. I wanted something beautiful, but not extravagant. Something meaningful, not flashy. I found a bottle of Laurent Perrier Grand Siècle, clean, elegant, understated, but exceptional. Like the version of me they had never seen. I clicked through to checkout, entered my card, authorized the charge, and then came the note. The airline offered a handwritten delivery option for special in-flight occasions. I requested it. At first, I didn't know what to write. A dozen phrases flooded my head, some bitter, some sharp, some aching. But I didn't want bitterness. I didn't want to slap them across the face with guilt. I wanted them to feel something quieter, something harder to shake off. After several drafts, I settled on the words that had been whispering in the back of my mind since the moment I saw that post. I wrote, "If your family ever forgets you, don't forget to remember yourself. This one's from me to me. Delilah." I reviewed it twice, no edits. I clicked submit. The confirmation came through immediately. The next morning, I received a message from a customer service manager at the airline. The note had been logged, the champagne scheduled, and the flight attendants briefed. They would present it mid-flight. I replied with a thank you. That was all. I closed my laptop and let the silence settle over me like fresh linen. That day, I worked a full shift on my agency's next campaign. My team never knew what was happening in my head. I answered emails, led the Zoom call, and approved the new logo design for our Berlin client, all with a calm, measured voice. But inside, I was vibrating. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't drama. It was a message, not just to them, but to myself. Because for years, I'd allowed myself to believe that invisibility was the price of peace, that being excluded meant I had done something wrong, that maybe I hadn't earned a seat at the table because I hadn't spoken loudly enough, but I'd built my own table, quietly, on my own terms. And now, for once, they'd have to look at it, toast to it, sip it in silence. That night, I lit a candle in my kitchen, just for ambiance. I sat at the counter and poured a glass of my own champagne, just a simple bottle I had tucked away for a special occasion. Apparently, this counted. I raised the glass and whispered to the room, to the girl they forgot, and to the woman she became. The bubbles danced in the light. The day of the flight arrived like any other. I didn't check their socials, didn't open messages. I already knew what time the champagne would be served, halfway through the transatlantic journey, when the cabin lights dimmed and passengers slipped into that space between time zones, between thoughts. That's when they'd see the note. That's when they'd read my name. I imagined the clink of the tray as it was placed before them. The pause, the confusion, the dawning. I didn't need to be there to see their faces. That morning, I went for a walk around my neighborhood, picked up a coffee from the corner cafe, chatted with the barista about their new playlist, breathed in the morning air like it was the first time I'd tasted it. I had no interest in imagining how they'd react. That part wasn't mine to control. But I could feel, for the first time, that something had shifted inside me. Like a part of me that had waited, hoped, for years was finally standing up and saying, enough. That evening, after dinner, I received an automated message from the airline confirming that the special delivery had been completed successfully, the champagne had been served, the note had been read, and that was that. No flood of texts, no dramatic fallout, just silence. For now. I was okay with that. I had no interest in starting a war, just in reclaiming a sliver of space that had always been mine. For once, I wasn't the one staring at a screen, heart pounding, wondering why no one had thought of me. I was the one who'd made them pause, who reminded them, however briefly, of the name they'd left off the boarding pass. And I didn't do it to provoke them. I did it to remind myself, I am not the leftover, I am not the backup, I am not invisible. And if no one else remembered me, I would. The cabin was dimmed for the long flight. Just the soft hum of the engines, overhead lights casting pools of gold onto tray tables, and the clink of glasses as passengers settled into their first-course wines. Delilah's family, her parents, her sister Alina, her brother Kyle, Aunt May, and a few cousins occupied nearly an entire row in first class. They looked like the picture of a perfect, well-off, well-bonded family on vacation. But that illusion was about to crack. At precisely 38,000 feet, a flight attendant named Yvonne approached them with practiced grace. She cradled a silver tray in her hands. On it, a bottle of chilled vintage champagne nestled in crushed ice, 2 elegant flutes, and a sealed envelope. "Compliments from a prior guest," Yvonne said gently. Alina blinked. "What's this?" Yvonne smiled. "We were asked to deliver it to your party specifically. The note is addressed to you all." Delilah's mother reached for the envelope first. "Is this some promotional thing?" But as her fingers touched the paper, something stopped her. The handwriting, familiar, too familiar. She turned it over, eyes narrowing at the neat signature on the back. "Delilah." The cabin seemed to hush. "Open it," said Kyle, frowning. She did. Alina leaned over her shoulder, reading aloud. "If your family ever forgets you, don't forget to remember yourself. This one's from me to me. Delilah." There was silence. Even the hum of the plane seemed to fall away. Alina's mouth twitched. She saw the photo. Kyle scoffed. She's being dramatic again. Aunt May glanced between them. She's not wrong. We didn't invite her. No one said she couldn't come, their mother said defensively. Mom, Alina replied, we booked the whole thing without even mentioning it. She's always so distant, their father added, trying to rationalize. We figured she wouldn't want to join. Or we assumed, May said quietly, because it was easier than asking. Yvonne, still standing nearby, gently interjected. Would you like me to pour? No one answered for a beat. Finally, their father nodded stiffly. Yes, thank you. She uncorked the champagne with practiced ease, pouring the pale gold liquid into the flutes. One by one, they accepted their glasses, but none raised them. The bubbles fizzed softly, echoing the tension. A few passengers nearby glanced over, sensing something unusual was unfolding. Alina stared at the note again. She sent this while we're flying. She timed it. Kyle muttered, Seriously, who does something like this? No one you thought wasn't paying attention, Aunt May said. Delilah's mother folded the note slowly. She could have just said she was hurt. She did, May said. She just didn't use her voice. She used this. For the first time, they sat with the discomfort, not brushing it off, not laughing it away. The truth was unavoidable. They had excluded her. Without malice, maybe. But also without thought. Which was almost worse. It wasn't rage or spite that hit them hardest. It was the elegance, the restraint, the clarity of it. Delilah hadn't fought for a seat. She had simply reminded them, gracefully, strategically, that she noticed. She didn't even write anything nasty, May said. She just mirrored the silence. They each sipped the champagne quietly. Kyle eventually broke the silence. Is this like a warning shot? Is she gonna air this online or something? Alina shook her head. No, this isn't about going public. She wanted us to feel what she felt, May said. To be left out. But not through anger. Through class. The rest of the flight passed in an odd hush. No one brought up the message again. No one texted Delilah. They weren't sure what to say. Every potential apology felt too small, too late. At one point, Delilah's mother picked up her phone and hovered over her messages. She typed, We miss you? Can we talk when we land? Then deleted it. She typed again, Why didn't you say something earlier? Deleted. Finally, she just stared out the window, champagne glass still half full on her tray. Across the aisle, Kyle leaned over to his cousin. I don't get it. Who sends champagne to a flight they're not on? His cousin answered, Someone who knows how to make a point without ever raising her voice. Alina tilted her head against the seat rest. It's not even about the drink, she murmured. It's about presence. What do you mean? Kyle asked. Alina held up the note again. She wasn't here, but she made herself seen. Meanwhile, Delilah sat in her studio apartment, bare feet tucked under her, sipping tea. Her laptop screen displayed a campaign proposal for a new eco-fashion brand. She was editing content, adding value, elevating everything as she always did, quietly, expertly. Her phone buzzed a few times. She didn't check it. She already knew what they were seeing. She had imagined it in her head as she typed out the note, had pictured her mother reading it, her sister reacting, the silence that would follow. Not from a place of cruelty, but as an act of clarity, of symmetry. A small, elegant message in return for years of being left out of the picture. She didn't want them to hurt, but she needed them to know what it felt like to be forgotten mid-conversation. To watch them laugh without her, post without her, live as if her seat had never existed. The champagne had arrived, The message had landed. And they would never forget it. Back on the plane, her father sighed and leaned back. She's different now. She's always been different, May corrected. We just never really saw her. Her mother whispered, maybe we didn't want to. For once, no one had a comeback. And above the Atlantic Ocean, in a sealed cabin filled with comfortable silence and expensive regret, Delilah's presence lingered. Not as an outburst, not as a tantrum, but as a statement wrapped in class, one that didn't need further explanation. They had erased her. She responded in cursive, chilled and sparkling. The first photo they posted from Rome was a shot of the Trevi Fountain. It came with the caption, "Family First." Delilah saw it while reclining on a white linen daybed, ocean breeze brushing her face like silk. The caldera view from her suite in Santorini stretched endlessly, pale blue melting into deep navy. Her phone buzzed. The irony made her laugh. "Family first?" Delilah said to herself. Right. By the time they were sipping espresso in a crowded Roman plaza, she was already on her second country. She had booked the trip that same day she sent the champagne. No drama, no fanfare. Just a quiet click through a familiar travel portal and a passport ready for another stamp. She chose Santorini on instinct, a place she'd dreamed of once in college, skimming travel blogs while working night shifts. It always felt far away then, unreachable. But not anymore. Not now. At the airport, she hadn't looked back. No text sent, no explanations. She booked business class, wore linen, packed light, brought 2 books and a sketch pad. She landed smiling, stepped into sun. Her suite was carved into the cliffside. Whitewashed stone walls, cobalt shutters, a private plunge pool. No one to share it with. And for once, that was the point. On the first morning, she had coffee on the terrace, watching the early boats drift across the water like ink stains in motion. There were no notifications on her phone. No missed calls. No group chat updates. Peace was a quiet thing, she realized. Not triumphant, just present. Later, she strolled through narrow streets where bougainvillea poured from the walls. A local artisan handed her a woven bracelet. "For luck," he said. She tied it on without thinking. She ate alone at a small taverna, ordering grilled octopus and white wine. The waiter asked, "Are you celebrating something?" Delilah looked at the candlelight flickering on the edge of her glass. She thought of her family, 600 miles away, raising their glasses over pasta and laughter and years of ignoring her. Yes, Delilah said, being forgotten and surviving it. By day 3, she had memorized the route down to the beach, a zigzag path of stone steps and blue doors. She swam alone at sunrise, journaled mid-morning, napped in the heat. No one asked her to explain where she was. No one cared if she had cell service. She caught herself humming one afternoon. Just humming. No reason. That's when she realized something had shifted. There was no more waiting, no more hoping her sister would finally say, "You should have been there." No more pausing before family dinners, wondering if her seat would be set. No more craving inclusion like it was a gift someone else had the right to give. She had stopped asking. One evening, as golden light spilled over the cliffs, she booked a private sail. The skipper met her at the dock, smiling as if he already knew. "I don't usually do this solo," Delilah said, stepping aboard. "Solo trips are the best," the skipper replied. "You see more, feel more." He was right. The wind was honest. The sky was unshared. And for once, she wasn't performing her worth for anyone. As the boat cut across the sea, Delilah thought of all the times she had been left behind. The time they planned a beach weekend without her and said, "We didn't think you'd be interested." The time they celebrated her brother's engagement and forgot to send her an invite, then claimed the email must have glitched. The time her mom posted a birthday message for every cousin but skipped hers. Claimed it was a scheduling tool error. Small things, isolated things. But when stacked, they weren't small anymore. They were patterns, choices, echoes of what they believed about her, or didn't. That night, back in her suite, she lit a single candle and sat by the open window. No music, just waves. Her phone buzzed. A photo. Her family at the Coliseum. They looked happy. Her sister wore a new sun hat. Her mom was holding a cone of gelato. Delilah muted the group chat and went back to the silence. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't building a case. She was just done. Not with love, but with hoping it would look the way it never had. The next morning, she woke up early and walked to a nearby chapel. It was carved into the rock, centuries old. No one else was there. She lit a candle, not for anyone, just for herself. The flame flickered, reflected in her eyes. She whispered, "I didn't need them to come find me. I just needed to stop losing myself waiting." At lunch, the waiter from her first night recognized her. "You're back," he said. "I leave tomorrow," Delilah replied. He smiled. "You seemed different tonight, more full." Delilah considered that. "I think I am." He poured her a glass of chilled rosé. "To you." She raised it. To no longer waiting to be seen. She walked through the shops that afternoon and bought herself a ring. Silver, simple, handmade. She didn't need a souvenir. She needed a reminder. Back in her suite, she packed slowly, folded each item with care. She tucked the woven bracelet into her passport sleeve, slipped the ring onto her right hand. No one had called, no one had apologized. But she didn't feel invisible anymore. Because she wasn't watching their stories, she was writing her own. On her final night, she had dinner on the terrace. No candlelit family table, just her. A single plate of lemon-drenched sea bass and a notebook open beside her wine glass. She wrote, "They forgot me, so I remembered myself, not out of spite, but out of mercy." She closed the notebook, took a bite, let the silence settle like an old friend. As the stars came out over the Aegean, Delilah leaned back and whispered to no one in particular. "I wasn't waiting this time, and I didn't miss a thing." The sky, vast and endless, gave no answer, and she smiled. Because she didn't need one. She already knew. The messages started trickling in the moment their flight landed. First came the family group chat, silent for days, now suddenly buzzing. Her phone lit up with a flood of unread texts. The preview bubble read, "We didn't think you'd want to come." Delilah read it twice, then locked her screen. The glass of wine beside her remained untouched. She was sitting on the terrace of her Santorini suite, legs curled beneath her, the Aegean Sea flickering blue and silver below her. A moment later, a new message popped up, this time from her brother. "You've been so busy lately, we figured you'd pass." Delilah whispered, "So busy you forgot I existed?" She took a slow sip of the wine, not out of bitterness, but reflection. The words didn't sting like they used to. Not after what she'd already felt. Not after what she had already released. The third message was the one that made her pause. It was from her mother. "Why didn't you just say something?" Delilah stared at the screen. She could have written 100 replies. She could have explained, line by line, every time they left her out. Every birthday she spent alone. Every time she saw the photos after the fact, the brunches, the vacations, the family moments that somehow never included her. She could have reminded them of the call, just before they boarded that flight, when they looked her in the eye and lied through omission. Of the fact they didn't even think she'd notice. But what was the point? Instead, she typed 4 words. "Glad you got home," and hit send. Later that evening, her phone buzzed again. A voice message from her sister. Delilah tapped play and held it to her ear. "Okay, hey, look, the champagne thing? That was kind of cold. Like you could have just called one of us. You didn't have to make it a whole moment. Everyone was kind of embarrassed." Delilah paused the recording, then rewound and played it again. "That was kind of cold." A strange sound slipped out of her mouth. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. She opened her notes app and began typing a reply. But halfway through, she stopped. Instead, she tapped the voice record icon and held the phone to her lips. Her voice was calm, even, collected. Delilah said, "It was colder to realize I wasn't missed. Champagne was the warmest thing I could think of." She hit send. Then she set the phone down and walked back to the balcony. The air was cooler now, the horizon blush-tinted with evening light. She watched a sailboat glide across the water, silhouetted like a dream she once thought too distant to reach. And for a long time, she said nothing. She just existed in the moment, full, free, unburdened. She didn't block her family. She didn't remove herself from the group chat. She didn't send angry paragraphs or dig through emotional archives to prove her point. She simply didn't go to Sunday dinner. It was the first one after the trip. Her mother sent the usual text. "Dinner at 5. Bring dessert if you're coming." Delilah saw it, marked it as read. Then she put on her favorite dress, one she'd bought in Mykonos, sea green silk, open back, and met a few friends at a rooftop jazz bar in the city. When she arrived, there was already a slice of cake waiting on the table. One of her friends, Kira, handed her a fork. "Figured you deserved a round 2 birthday." Delilah laughed. "You didn't have to." Kira replied, "Exactly why I wanted to." Another friend, Samir, raised a glass. "To being unforgettable, even if some people forgot." The group clinked glasses. Delilah felt her eyes sting for a second. Not from pain, but gratitude. Not because she needed them to remember, but because they always had. She looked around the table at these people who had shown up for her in small, quiet ways. People who never made her feel like an afterthought. People who brought light, even when her own family brought shadows. It made her realize something. It wasn't that she didn't have a seat. It's just that she had spent too long trying to earn one at the wrong table. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a photo from her cousin. A shot of the family gathered around the dinner table. A pie in the center. A half-eaten roast. Everyone smiling. No caption. Delilah didn't open it fully. She let the preview sit in her notifications, then swiped it away. There was no malice in the gesture. No defiance, just clarity. She didn't owe them more than she had already given. Later that night, she checked her email. Among the usual client updates and newsletter subscriptions was one unexpected message, from a name she hadn't seen in years. Her uncle Anthony, her father's younger brother. The black sheep of the family, according to everyone else. Subject line: "Saw the news. Just wanted to say thank you." She opened the message. It read, "Hey Delilah, saw a clip on TikTok someone took of the champagne note. Didn't know it was you until a friend sent me the original post and said, 'Isn't this your niece?' Wanted to say, 'What you did?' Classy, real classy. I've been there too. Keep your head up, they'll catch up, or they won't. But you already know how to fly. Uncle A." Delilah smiled. She clicked reply and typed, "Thanks, Uncle A, it means more than you know." Then she shut her laptop, took one more sip of her cocktail, and leaned back into the warmth of the evening. The stars were starting to emerge. And for the first time in a long while, she wasn't waiting. For a text, an invite, a place at someone else's table. She was already full. She was already seen, and if some people never understood the gesture, that was okay. It wasn't for them. It was for the version of herself who used to cry in quiet corners, who used to rehearse what she would say if someone just asked how she was, who used to wonder what she had done to become so easy to forget. It was for that girl, and for the woman she had become. Delilah took a deep breath, and as the music from the rooftop lounge played on, she whispered to herself, "I didn't make a scene. I made a statement." And this time, she didn't need to explain it to anyone. I sat in the airport lounge, legs crossed, cappuccino in hand, eyes scanning the tarmac through the enormous glass panes. It had been exactly 1 month. 1 month since I saw that family photo captioned "Just Us." 1 month since I sent champagne to 30,000 feet. And 1 month since I stopped asking for a seat at a table that always had room, just not for me. A soft announcement filtered through the speakers. Now boarding, Flight 147 to Lisbon. I wasn't flying to make a point. I wasn't running away. I just didn't feel like staying still anymore. The boarding pass tucked in my passport read, "Delilah Tran, Seat 1A. Not bad for the forgotten daughter. I took one last sip, tucked the photo into my carry-on. Yes, the photo, and made my way to the gate. But before I tell you what I framed, let me tell you what I didn't reply to. The texts came sporadically over the last few weeks, never direct apologies, just vague feelers. My cousin Ashley. "We should catch up sometime. I didn't realize you weren't invited." My mom. "I keep thinking about what you did. It was surprising." My sister left me another voice note. "You could have just told us, instead of making it a production." And my brother sent a reel of someone dancing in Rome with the caption, "This reminded me of you." That was it. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because none of them ever said what I actually needed to hear. "We're sorry. We excluded you." And it hurt. They thought I wanted acknowledgement. But I had already given that to myself. I was tired of decoding breadcrumbs, of making room in my calendar for people who never checked if I was free, of bringing wine and hugs and effort to gatherings I was barely considered for. So I gave myself something different this time. Solitude, yes, but also sovereignty, and yes, a little bit of champagne. The framed photo? It wasn't of me. It wasn't of the note I sent. It was of the empty lounge chair I sat in the moment after the airline confirmed delivery. The way the light filtered through the window, the clean table, the untouched glass of bubbly, the feeling of calm. It was the first time I had ever felt visible to myself. I clicked the photo without thinking. Later, I printed it, matted it, framed it in brushed silver, set it on the shelf beside my desk. Every time I walked past, I remembered, you are allowed to toast yourself, even when no one else does. Especially then. I boarded early, settled into my seat, and placed my bag in the overhead compartment with practiced ease. The flight attendant smiled and asked, "Celebrating anything special today?" I answered, "Yes, a personal milestone." She nodded. "Would you like a glass of champagne?" I smiled. "Yes, please." As she walked away, I caught my reflection in the window. Not flawless, not perfect, but composed, quietly radiant. Years ago, I would have texted someone right then, sent a photo, reached for outside affirmation. But now? I sat still, sipped slowly. I didn't need to tell anyone where I was going, or why, or who I had become. That wasn't bitterness talking. That was peace. There was no dramatic closure, no fiery confrontation, no explosive family reckoning, just a shift. I no longer needed their table, because I had built my own. And more importantly, I had learned to dine at it alone without apology. The flight was uneventful, the air smooth. The hours passed in books, clouds, and the clink of quiet glasses. I thought about how many years I had spent interpreting silence as my fault, as a reflection of my inadequacy. But their silence had never been about me. It was about their comfort, their hierarchy, their inability to see beyond old versions of me, the broke freelancer, the creative one, the afterthought. They kept that story alive so they could keep their own story neat. But stories change, and so had mine. I landed in Lisbon just as golden hour brushed the rooftops with fire. There was no one waiting for me at arrivals, no handmade sign, no family dinner on the itinerary. And that was fine, better than fine. I checked into a quiet apartment near Alfama, where the tram echoed down cobbled streets and music floated from hidden taverns. I wandered the night markets, ordered seafood with awkward Portuguese, listened to a street guitarist play a song that made me cry without knowing why. Not out of sadness, but because I wasn't carrying weight that wasn't mine anymore. The next morning, I had breakfast in a sunlit courtyard. My phone buzzed. A group photo. My family. Again. Sunday brunch. Smiles all around. Another caption. Family time. Always the best time. No mention of me. No space for me. But this time, I didn't shrink. I didn't stare too long. I didn't imagine myself at the table, one seat away from inclusion.
I closed the message. Not in anger. In freedom. I realized I hadn't been fighting to be invited. I had been fighting to stop hoping. And somewhere between that group photo and this cafe table, I had finally stopped. I toasted my espresso to the blue sky and whispered, "You're doing just fine, Delilah." Not for show, not for spite, just for me. Weeks later, back home, I passed the billboard I had once used to send my message in lights. It had cycled to a new ad, an upcoming music festival, I think. The only trace left of my moment was the shadow of where the vinyl had once been. But in my apartment, the photo of the lounge chair still sat on my shelf, and beside it now, a copy of the note I had written to them on that flight. I kept it, not as a wound, but as a reminder of what it feels like to write your own worth into the world, to make room for yourself when no one else does, to rise above without burning everything down. Sometimes grace is the loudest answer.
Sometimes silence is your declaration. And sometimes, the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's existing fully, openly, elegantly, without permission. I slid the framed photo a little straighter, adjusted the lighting, smiled to myself. Then I walked to my desk, checked my client dashboards, booked a retreat in Kyoto, confirmed a podcast interview, and made myself a promise. No more shrinking to fit in. No more asking what I did wrong. No more waiting for someone to say, "We see you now." Because I see myself. Clearly, constantly, unapologetically. And as the final voiceover says, they forgot me. So I poured a glass of champagne where they couldn't ignore me. I used to beg for a seat. Now, I fly solo. And the view's better from here. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to subscribe for good luck.